The following podcast is brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at WrestlingWithJohners.com.
Very fortunate to have Donovan Dijak, the person who I wanted to have had on the channel for quite some time. Donovan, how are we, man?
Good. How are you?
Living the dream.
Awesome.
Would you prefer to be called Donovan or Dijak? Which one do you prefer?
Doesn't matter. Dijak usually works best because it's my real name too, so it's just easiest.
Yeah, I'll call you Dijak then. So where do we even start with you? So since June the 28th, you've been a very busy man, haven't you?
Yeah, very busy. Busier than I've ever been in the world of professional wrestling, actually. I'm traveling all over the place. I just got back from Germany last night.
Wow.
That was a long day because Germany's a 6-hour time difference from where I am on the East Coast of the United States. So I woke up at at 5 a.m. German time in some town like 2 hours south of Hamburg because we had to drive another 2 hours to Berlin. So I had to catch a flight to Munich and then the flight from Munich to Boston. And the whole day was like, it was funny because as we were flying, we were kind of following the sun. So it ended up being like a 30-hour day, which is, weird, but that's what it was.
No good. So where do we even start, man? Your time in WWE, you spent from 2017, correct me if I'm wrong, up until 2024.
That's right. Yep.
So quite a long time. What's some of your fondest memories from being in WWE?
Honestly, a lot of it is the friends I made. The people that I got to work with is just always so exciting. Obviously, at the time I was able to be on television or a premium live event, that's always an honor, and that's where you get the most eyeballs on you. So that was always my favorite time to to show out and show exactly what I was capable of. So those two things are my main net sort of positive experiences from WWE because I was able to make a ton of friends and able to wrestle a ton of good opponents and have some great matches. So I'm very proud of my time there.
Yeah, one of my favorite matches from your time in the black and gold brand is the one with Keith Lee at NXT Takeover Portland. That was such a huge match. Two big meaty men, two tall men going at it, for about 20 plus minutes. And just the crowd reaction, just some moves that you did in that match. Is it called the sunset flip where you flipped him? Sunset flip?
Flipped him?
Like when you both on the turnbuckle, like where you both go backwards.
Yeah, that's called a Spanish fly. It was actually a move that was created by, I think, SAT, the tag team out of New York. If I'm not mistaken. It's probably the first and last time I've ever given that move because it's risky. So yeah, I don't envision myself doing that anytime soon again. But yeah, it worked out that time. It was a lot of fun. Keith and I have a very high level of trust with one another. So it's always nice to get in the ring with him.
Yeah, you also had some matches with him in PWG.
Yep. We had one match. That was actually my last independent match before I signed with WWE and NXT. That was obviously a blast. That was kind of this is my last opportunity on the indies. So let's go do everything that I possibly can sort of moment. And some people liked it, some people hated it. That's the cool thing about pro wrestling is that it can be very polarizing. And usually if something is polarizing, that's usually the most beneficial towards creating a name for yourself. So it was good. It was a good step in the right direction for me.
Yeah, what would you say the biggest difference is between Triple H's version for the black and gold brand to Shawn Michaels? It was like a pink area, weren't it? Pink. It was a weird colours.
That's a great question. It's hard to determine exactly where those two match up because kind of what happened. Again, I wasn't there during this timeline. I was with the main roster, so it was in the middle of COVID, so it was hard to kind of get a grasp of everything that was going on. but I think a lot of what happened during that transition wasn't dictated by either of them. So it sort of started to trend in a direction that was less of both of their visions. But then obviously as I sort of hopped on board in the quote unquote white and gold at the end of 2022, which we're coming up on 2 years now since then. That's when I think it started to really trend in sort of Shawn's vision
Yeah.
and direction. I would say that the main differences are probably just kind of like uh just differences in sort of styles of storytelling. You know,
Yeah.
Sean's version has a lot more of the uh the character driven narratives, whereas Triple H's was always a lot more focused on in ring narratives. Again, not that either of them were lacking the other, uh, just different styles, different stylistic approaches. And I don't know whether that's based on metrics or feedback, or at the end of the day, they're running a business, so they're just trying to make as much money for the company as possible and draw the most ratings and get the most views and social media interactions and stuff like that, because it all generates revenue. So yeah, whether it's their personal preference or whether they're just trying to make more money, I can't say, but just tiny small stylistic differences. But overall it was actually very similar, but both of them were a lot more similar to each other than either of them were to Vince McMahon's version that I worked under on Raw. So it's just different styles, different versions of everybody's best vision to generate revenue, I guess.
Yeah. I personally think that WWE dropped the ball with you. Like, and by that I mean very talented guy, very for the guy your size, the way you moved. I mean, for anyone who hasn't seen the match with Keith Lee, that's just a prime example to go and watch. Just the way you move, the stuff that you can do. I think, yeah, they should have done a lot more with you. You went from NXT to the main roster, and then you went to this, which is I'm going to ask your opinion about Retribution. What was that about?
It was as far as I know, this was never told to me directly, I don't think, but it was just Vince McMahon's vision at that point in time. I was happy in a lot of aspects with Retribution, because a lot of those guys are my really close friends. Obviously, it was a call up, in a very difficult sort of time in the world, because the pandemic had just hit and just started. So, like, yes, we were called up, but we were also dealing with a lot of things, both in the world and with
Yeah,
our jobs professionally in WWE. So yeah, a lot of positives came from it. We were excited to all be on television, be on Monday Night Raw, be able to get these backstage vignettes, be able to get mic time, and that's a lot of it is just timing, right? A lot of it is just timing. It's you have one idea, and whether or not it pans out, or something pops up with a network, and then things can lose momentum. So you just I try not to, at this point. I try not to focus too much on why something happened, because at the end of the day, when you start thinking about stuff like that, it can snowball, and it can literally be anything. So really, most of it just boils down to timing. That's really the only realistic approach to anything in the world of creative and booking and professional wrestling, especially in WWE, right? Because like I said in the last question, everybody's just trying to generate as much revenue as they can. That's a publicly traded company. It's a business. They're just trying to make money. So at one point, Vince McMahon, I think, felt like that would generate money, and then at another point, I guess he didn't. So it's just timing.
So Mustafa Ali got revealed to be the leader. Was there ever anyone else planned to be the leader of Retribution? Was there any talks for anyone else to be?
Uh, Again, I'm not sure. No one ever told me directly. Vince
Yeah,
McMahon never came to me and said, like, "Oh, this guy's going to be the lead." It just
yeah,
happened one day, and that's kind of how we find out. I heard after the fact, and again, take this with a grain of salt because I have no idea, right? It's a pro wrestling thing where you hear from one person who heard from another person who heard from another person. So
Yeah.
it's literally just a rumor. But I heard a rumor that originally Finn Balor was maybe talked about to be the leader of Retribution, and but the timing, again, it's all timing, the timing of that was he was going back to NXT at that point, so it ended up going in a different direction. Again, I have no idea whether that's true or not. It's just something that I heard. So, maybe that's the reality of the pro wrestling business, is that we get told very, very little in terms of, plans and things like that, because ultimately we don't really need to know that stuff, right? Like, oh,
True.
this is if you tell someone their plan and then it either does or especially if it doesn't happen, then that person's going to be, well, why didn't my plan happen? That was the plan. Well, that's the best laid plans of mice and men. It's they're just everybody's just trying to figure out how to make how to generate the most revenue. And I think that's, as a wrestler, just to take a step back and say, okay, this is what's happening. Make your pitches, all that stuff, give your feedback in the most polite and productive way possible. But at the end of the day, it's just timing.
100%. And like I mentioned, obviously you went from NXT, the black and gold brand.
Yep.
Was that a special time for you, especially with all the superstars and talent that was on that show?
Honestly, everything that I get to do in professional wrestling is a special time. My time on the indies, everything in pro wrestling is a double-edged sword, right? Like nothing is 100% perfect and nothing is 100% you know awful either. It's all these areas of gray, right? Like when I was first on the indies, I was traveling the roads with my friends, but again, it's just kind of cutting your teeth and making the grind, so you're not making that much money, but you're wrestling in front of these small venues. But the plus side to that is you're with your good friends and you're traveling the road and you're having lots of fun on the road and stuff like that. And then you get to WWE in black and gold, and you're making more money, so that's a positive in my personal life. And then I'm with a lot of my friends again, and you're getting television time. But then there's the stress of working with producers and being given scripts and memorizing words and things like that. So everything is a double-edged sword. It really is. And I already talked about my experience on Raw and how that had a lot of positives and also some negatives. So, and right now I'm experiencing the same thing. There's different pros and cons to this. I had to sit on a plane for 8 hours last night, and my body is killing me. So it's the longest plane ride I've ever been on. So yeah, that's a big negative, right? Like I'm in a lot of pain right now. But
Yeah.
I also got to wrestle with a lot of my friends. I got to make new friends in Germany. I got to be in front of a great crowd, great people. There was a lot of Donovan Dijak fans. I was able to sell a lot of T-shirts and do a lot of meet and greet stuff, and I was able to wrestle Axel Tischer, who's a good friend of mine from the black and gold NXT era. So yeah. Plus, I get to meet and wrestle new guys like Krampus. It was just overall tons of fun. But again, everything's a double-edged sword, right? Like 8 hours on a plane, I could do without.
So since you've been from WWE, July, August, September, that's 3 months.
Yep.
3 months of
Most of all.
grafting. Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it?
We're almost at the end, yeah.
That's Jesus. You have made 3 months that you've been gone from WWE, and I bet you've been so, like you mentioned, so busy. You've been to the UK, you've been MLW, you turned up in Germany. Is there anywhere that else is on your radar, country that you've not announced or been yet, that you can't wait to go to?
I mean, I'm open to anything. It needs to be, at this point in my career, it needs to be conducive for both me from a business aspect and from a personal aspect in terms of my family, right? Like, for example, I've never wrestled in Mexico or Japan, which are obviously big hotbeds for professional wrestling. But at the same time, I have a 7-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. So, you know, whereas in 2014, 2 months in Japan would have been like the greatest thing in the world. Now 2 months in Japan is 2 months away from my kids, so I have to weigh the pros and cons, from a business aspect and a personal aspect, and just lots of different things like that. That being said, I'm open to everything. I explore all possibilities. Again, Mexico and Japan are the two that come to mind, just because of the rich history there, and they're just pretty much the two top countries left that I've never wrestled in. But I mean, there's other things, a ton of companies from France have hit me up. I feel like 5 separate, including last night, another company hit me up from France. It's so hard to match dates with European countries, because the travel, right? It's always the travel. They want me to come in on a Saturday or whatever. Well, that if I go to Europe on a Saturday, well, that takes away my Friday and that takes away my Sunday, because so I need to try to figure out somewhere else in Europe to go to, and if I have any other date in America or Canada or something like that, then it's hard to figure out how to how to match all those things. So I'm trying to navigate it as best I can. I have a lot of help from Steve and Mojo, the Paragon Talent Group. They're my managers, and they do it. They work with me a lot, and my wife helps me a lot. But I do a lot of it myself too. So it's all just trying to match dates and figure out what's best for me, both personally and business wise.
Yeah, it's good that you got like a little team around you that supports you and helps you, and that's the most important thing.
For sure.
You have RevPro is one of the main ones that hit you up first when you left to WWE. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you fought for them 4 times.
3. Well,
3.
3 this year, right? I wrestled for
Yeah.
RevPro probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 times back in 2016, 2017. And that was one of the reasons why I jumped at the opportunity to go back, right? Because my initial plan, because I talked with Steve on the day I sent out that letter, and my inbox started exploding and flooding. And I'm like, how do I, because I think I had somewhere in the ballpark of like 500 to 1,000 emails just within the first just within the first week. And again, a lot of those were interview requests, but also, there was maybe a third of them were booking requests, right? So it was just I was like, Steve, how do I navigate this? And his advice to me was take care of the people who took care of you in the past. And I said, okay, that's a great strategy to start. So I started sort of prioritizing the companies that I was familiar with, and the guys who had given me shots back when I was, less of a name, maybe when I was only in Ring of Honor, or even before Ring of Honor. So I started to sort of go through it that way. And Andy from RevPro was one of the first guys who emailed me. So that was one of the first guys that I emailed back, and we were able to set up a series of 3 dates. And yeah, I was super excited to be on all those shows. I had some wonderful opponents, and it was a lot of fun trips. England is one where you can do it just a little bit more. Again, not easy, but it is possible to do a show in America on Friday and then a show in England on Saturday, and then to even come back and do a show in America on Sunday. It's not easy, but it is possible. Whereas in other countries, it's not even a realistic option. But I was able to do that a handful of times. One time specifically, I wrestled for Northeast Wrestling, which is a company I worked for a ton back before WWE. And I said, I have to be the opener if I'm going to be on this show. And the promoter, Mike, was very accommodating to that. But as soon as I finished the match, I rolled out of the ring and toweled myself off and packed up all my gear and got in my rental car and just drove down 95 to JFK, which is the biggest airport in New York City. And they were like closing the boarding door as I was like coming to the gate. I cut it so close. And then I got on that flight, flew through the night. It was the next day. I got no sleep. I'm just like all wide-eyed. And then I wrestled Michael Oku in maybe Portsmouth or something like that. And it was just like I was running on fumes. I had no sleep, but it's doable. And that's, again, pros and cons, double-edged sword. It was a blast. I had a ton of fun. But yeah, I could do without those those overnight red eyes. They're kind of brutal.
So you wrestled Michael Oku, Gabe Kidd at the 12th anniversary. How was that? Very special event.
Yeah, the Gabe Kidd match especially. I didn't realize until it, like, because we got there and you saw the card or whatever, and until didn't register in my brain, because you just kind of look at the thing and say, okay, where are we on the card? You don't really look at a lot of the other matches or the builds or anything. And it didn't really strike me until I was standing there waiting to go out. The match right before us was like a 25-minute, like 25 or 30-minute, like I think it was a women's 10-man or a 10-woman tag, or I think it was a 5-on-5 tag match, and they had like thumbtacks and tables, and everyone was bleeding. And I'm watching this match, and I'm like, "Oh no, we have to follow this." And the time we'd been allotted was like 10 to 12 minutes. So I'm like, "What on earth are we going to do to try to top that?" Because ultimately, that's what a pro wrestling card is. You're trying to escalate everything, and it's supposed to build as it goes up. And I'm like, man, did I not know that match was going? And it was so good, and they're all so talented. But like, as you would expect, the crowd was, they were excited to see me and Gabe, but man, they had just witnessed a massacre and a beautiful painting. So yeah, it was very difficult to follow that match.
Yeah. Is there anyone else from the UK that you haven't fought yet that you would love to step in the ring with that you know of?
Oh, that's a great question. The one you didn't mention was Robbie X. I'd love to get a rematch against him because he was absolutely tremendous. I've never wrestled Will Ospreay. Which is weird because we were in Ring of Honor at the exact same time. We were both in a program for the TV title, so we were feuding it was like a triangle feud, and just for whatever reason, he and I never had a match against each other. So I'd love to get an opportunity to do that. I think that would be a wonderful clash of styles. But yeah, I mean, who knows whether that'll happen.
Awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
You mentioned the top that you were in MLW. You recently versed Timothy Thatcher in MLW.
Yep.
Have you got any more dates or anything coming up? Is MLW like your new home at the moment?
I do currently prioritize MLW dates. Yes. Yeah. They've given me I think dates through all the way through April. So I have all of those marked in my calendar. Yeah, it's a good relationship between myself and MLW. They originally reached out to me, and we had a nice long conversation. That pronouns, right? MSL, Saint Laurent, and Court Bauer are my two sort of go-tos in terms of communication with MLW. But they've been super, positive, and they've been very upfront with what's happening, right? Again, you take all plans with a grain of salt, but so far, right, because I'm used to hearing plans and being like, okay, plans, right? But so far they've said a lot of things, and all of them have happened, so to me, that's a great sign, right? If someone tells you something and then they follow through on it, that's music to my ears, right? Because I'm in the world of professional wrestling, a lot of the time that doesn't happen. So far in MLW, it's been a great experience. I've been able to, like you mentioned, the match with Tim Thatcher, that was my first full match with MLW. But other than that, I've been getting a lot of promo time, a lot of segments, a lot of backstage promos and stuff like that. And that's always music to my ears because, most people have seen me wrestle, right? If you're a MLW fan, you're at least generally familiar with my matches, probably, just because you're probably the kind of person who consumes a lot of professional wrestling. So I think people know what to expect with my matches. I think the promo side of it and the character development and stuff like that, you got a good amount of that in the latest version of NXT, but not as much like in ring, like mic time.
Yeah.
Whereas I've already gotten a ton of that in MLW, so I'm super excited to continue to develop that. I think that's something that I think a lot of people view as my quote unquote weakness, which I don't view as a weakness at all. I view it as a strength that I just haven't been able to present. Right? I love talking on the mic. I love, especially if it's just ad-libbing off the cuff. I mean, that's really my comfort zone. So I'm excited to continue doing that with MLW. Unfortunately, our last date got canceled or postponed in the Tampa area because of the hurricane. But hopefully we'll be back there, and then we have a date coming up in Chicago, and that's going to be a ton of fun. I think we're going to pick up right where we left off.
Definitely, man. So the last few questions.
You got it.
What would you say is the most rewarding thing of being a professional wrestler?
I'd say the friendships. Yeah, I've made some really close lifelong friends out of professional wrestling, and I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world. A lot of these guys I'm really close with. I talk to them every single day, and it's actually like I have two separate groups of really close friends. There's like the guys that I trained with initially in that 2013-14 stretch of time that I was talking about, riding up and down the roads with, and we weren't making much money. And then there's the guys that I bonded with in WWE and a lot of the guys in Retribution, so yeah, it's my friendships I wouldn't trade for anything in the world.
Awesome. Has this company reached out to you at all?
Reached out to me? I don't think so. If they did, I might not hear about it because it would be through my management.
Yeah, that would have been good.
Yeah, I don't think they would necessarily bring that to my attention until something more concrete developed from it. Maybe they will. I don't know. I was backstage at Forbidden Door. It was wonderful to see a lot of people there. It's a lot of their structure and their production is sort of based off of the Ring of Honor model. So being backstage was extra cool for me because a lot of the guys from Ring of Honor when I was there in 2015 and 16 were backstage at AEW. So it was awesome to catch up with them. I got to see almost every wrestler in the company I know and have wrestled before at this point. So yeah, it's just again, it's pro wrestling. Everything's going to end up being a timing thing. I'm not worried too much about who's out and different things like that, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's all just timing. I mean, that's kind of the theme of pro wrestling in general in 2024.
Yeah. Is there anything that you have coming up that you can mention or coming up in general?
I got a ton coming up. I mean, this week alone, I'm in Winnipeg on Thursday, and then Vermont on Friday, Saturday in Maine, Sunday in Massachusetts. Sunday's actually in Leominster, Massachusetts, which is where I was born. So that'll be interesting. And it's also in conjunction with Make-A-Wish. So that's going to be a ton of fun. And then, like I mentioned, I have MLW coming up, I think maybe 2 Saturdays from now, and that's in Chicago. So that'll be a ton of fun. You can catch that on YouTube for free. Again, yeah, just all over the place, very busy, but that's a good thing. It's a good problem to have besides my back, which has to deal with all the airplane travel.
Make sure you get extra leg room and stuff.
I try, not always possible. You know what happened on this 8-hour flight is I bought the extra leg room, which was not cheap, right? It was like $100 or something. And I was like, whatever, it's an 8-hour flight. Like I have to have extra leg room. And what happened is I chose the seat it was a double-decker plane, and I'd never been on a double-decker plane until the flight to Germany, but the top deck was sold out on the flight there. So on the flight back, I got the extra legroom seat on the top deck, and I was excited and looking forward to it. And then I tried to check in, and it was like, oh, they switched the plane and there's no top deck anymore. So I just didn't have an extra legroom seat. So I was like, oh no. So I got smashed in the back somewhere with my knees like in my face. Thankfully, there was nobody in the middle seat, so that was kind of nice. But still, I'm 6'7", so like my legs are like bent and contorted under the seat, right? Because if you're in the back, like you maybe have like a 1.5 foot of wiggle room just to try to get your legs in. So yeah, it was not the most pleasant flight, but it could have been worse. It could have been worse. So I try to look at the positives.
Final 2 questions. Who's your Mount Rushmore in professional wrestling?
Oof, great question. It's so hard to say because professional wrestling has so many different aspects. Like my Mount Rushmore for in-ring would be dramatically different than my Mount Rushmore for like a a promo or like a superstar, So, I mean, I'll just say the first few names that come to mind. I'd say probably like maybe The Undertaker for sure. I'd probably throw Brock Lesnar in there. Maybe Randy Orton and Shawn Michaels. Maybe if I just had to pick all around sort of stuff.
I like that.
Even as I say that, I just like I didn't mention Stone Cold Steve Austin. I didn't mention Triple H. There's just all sorts of people who are way high up there, but it's so hard to pick four. In a thing that encompasses so much, right?
Yeah, 100%. I always ask everyone else this just to end it. An inspirational message from Dijak. What's yours?
I would say figure out what your motivation is and focus on that. I do everything that I do for my family. That's my motivation. Every bump I take, every plane ride I do, everything I agree to is for the benefit of my family because they're my motivation. So if you as the viewer of this can figure out your motivation, then that answers your why at all times. And once you're answering your why, then you'll always be happy.
I love that. Dijak, thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate your time. I know you're a very busy man.
Yeah. Thank you
All the best.
For sure.
I'll definitely have you later on in 2020. Jesus, nearly end of 2024. Yeah. I'll definitely have you on again in 2025.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks, dude.
Awesome, man. Thank you. Take care.
Yep. Bye.